Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Pleasure to see all of you online, and I'm sure it's going to be a full day of learning. Here is exactly what I have got to talk to you about today. It's much to do with Luminous Spark. People will be wondering, what is Luminous Spark? Well, primarily, it's all about personality. So today's presentation from my end, it's all very clearly timed that we cannot be overshooting time. So I'm going to make sure that things are actually covered as much as I possibly can within a short space of about 25 minutes before Sheikh comes on and tells me, get out, right? So here I have got that little bit of time for me to actually tell you what's going on. So today's is all about personality. And people might be wondering, what is this all about? Do we really need to understand who am I, right? And when you ask anyone what sort of a person you are as a personality, we seem to be giving all sorts of different directions in terms of who we are, right? And this is a particular way in which to say, in a very formal way, who you are. So Luminous Spark is a particular personality questionnaire which reveals that pretty much, right? And also it is for the purpose of trying to understand who the others are, for example. You'd also need to know who your team members are and what kind of juniors do you have with you. That's another important thing that you need to understand. So what kind of personality sits amongst your own team members, for example? What are they made up of, right? And what are the kind of behavior changes that you need in yourself in order to meet the expectations of others? So it's not always about changing people, you know, it's also about changing ourselves, right? So that's something that's exactly what Luminous Spark primarily talks about. So effectively, we want to become better people manager. We really want to build a good rapport with our team. We want to understand our team members better and manage people better. So here's what I would like you all to do. If you're watching this presentation on your mobile, I would request you to pick up another mobile. So there's 5 minutes for you to actually do this. We're going to go in good speed, but if you're going to miss it, of course, you've got a recording. You can come back and do it. So look into your app store, whether you have a Apple phone or whether it's Android. Just look for Luminous Splash. Is everybody with me? So I'm just assuming that everybody is with me, right? So just look for it. You will see Luminar Splash, something like that particular icon there, which is sitting there right on the right-hand side, right? And when you do that, it will lead you to start. It's a very basic instructions. It will not take you more than a few seconds to download, really. And then it'll ask you, do you have a splash? The answer is no, because you're doing it for the first time. And it will then ask you to confirm your name. Yeah. I'm going to give you a bit of time for that, right? So you could also sip a coffee at the meantime, but I would like you to be on the app, right? And a few instructions will appear. There will be a few questions, about 15 to 18 questions that would primarily pop up, right? And it will ask you about what you think, right? Whether you are this way or you're that way. And if you have not answered for a few seconds, then it just move on and it'll ask you whether you're unsure, right? So I'm going to be sort of in a way taking my own time here for a few minutes because I would like every one of you to be on track. Because what we do now is pretty much to understand ourselves very, very quickly so that the next slides that comes would make more sense. So continue until all the questions have been answered. It might ask you for an email at the very end, but it's not quite required for you to actually enter it. But you can end it and you will get hold of a splash, which you see something like that on that screen in the end. So it's a bit of a silence here also at my end, respecting the fact that people are working. So I've given participants some work here now. So if anyone here who is able to speak can also just tell me whether you're like kind of on track, whether you've done that, so I know there's a success happening as well. Yep. So I'm just kind of quiet just because I just want you to complete this, right? So probably another minute, and then I will move on to the next slide. Right. So in the end, you should get hold of a splash, which is exactly what you see on the screen there. Yeah. So am I good to go on? Are people on track? Yes. I've got everybody alert now for the first, perhaps getting people to do some action at their end rather than at my end. So that's where we are. So in case you are a bit slow on this one, or for some reason technology didn't work, please get back to the recording and you can always come back and do it, right? So I'm just going to go on to talk to you a little bit about what's actually on the screen, which you see right now, and where exactly your splash is looking like. You know, its splash is explained like, what's my personality? How is it splashed over the place, right? It's pretty much in that terminology, right? That's the way you look at things, right? Now, according to the psychology of studies of human behavior, we have got primarily an 8 aspects around human behavior, which is exactly what you see there, right? And these 8, as you can see, are 4 opposites, right? If I made to say that, 4 opposites. I'll start with the one which is very easy, right? I'll go like a storytelling. We all know extroversion, introversion, right? From the time that we are a child, we are told, child he's introvert, this person is an extrovert. We have heard this very often, right? And we tend to think that extroversion is perhaps good, introversion is not so good, right? Now, roll it back into the organization that you are in. What sort of person do you need for a particular job function? Do you need an extroverted person or do you need an introverted person? People say for sales closure, you need to have someone who is extroverted, who can go there and really sell very well. But what if this person is only talking and not listening to the customer? Right? Good food for thought question. So you might also sometimes require someone who's prepared to listen, right? So it's quite important to try and see whether is it really extroversion that would help all the time or introversion would come of help as well. So this is a 2 opposite extreme, right? So that's the other 2 aspects. Let's look at another extreme, which is people focused and outcome focused. I wonder if in the organization you have noticed that, someone, you get into the office in the morning and you say good morning, and they turn around and they tell you, yeah, good morning, but there's a file on your desk. Can you kindly finish that and we'll meet up at 12 o'clock? And you're wondering, what's wrong with this person? Couldn't even acknowledge a good morning properly or ask me how was my weekend, right? You might end up thinking that way. Well, that's simply because this individual is very outcome focused, not because the individual is interested in being rude to you, right? It's not that. They are more interested in outcome. And the other extreme is someone who's more people focused. Love that good morning. Love that how was your weekend? Yeah, I enjoyed it and brilliant. It was fabulous and, and so on. Sorry, have I gone to just moved on? So that's a very interesting component, right? So a people-focused person would largely be interested to know how things went before getting to the business, right? An outcome-focused person would really not be spending too much time on good mornings and how was your weekend and stuff like that, right? So it's personality differences. It's not about rudeness, okay? Let's understand that clearly. Let's look at another personality opposites. Inspiration driven, discipline driven, right? Don't take the words literally. The discipline is someone who's really disciplined in work and the opposite is an indisciplined person. we don't really mean that, right? What we're really trying to say here is someone who is largely following rules and regulations and steps to be followed is considered to be discipline driven. So they don't deviate from the plans, right? So if you remember looking at anyone in your own organization, they would say, well, there are 4 steps to do this. Why are we skipping something? And if you're an inspiration-driven person, you will say, well, listen, we got to reach an outcome. So what if we skip 1 or 2 steps, right? So that's the difference when it comes to personality. So someone who's on the inspiration-driven is more flexible, is more adaptable, you know, and willing to look at in terms of in all forms of flexibility. Whereas a discipline-driven person is saying, no, hold on a moment. You got to follow this. We can't deviate. You got to stick to the rules. That sort of thinking. Let's look at the other opposites. Big picture, down to earth. What is that? Well, down to earth literally means people who really like to look into facts and figures. Okay? People who feel it's extremely very important to look at facts. Right? They will do a lot of research. I wonder if at any point in time you've asked someone, I want to buy a laptop, and can you suggest one? And then they open up the spreadsheet. So people like Highland, for example, who are largely into all of these, so might just open up and they will just put all the columns and rows, and they will put the RAM and the size and the inches of the laptop and whatever, all parameters. And after a whole day, they will tell you, I think you should buy this. And you're wondering, all I needed is something to just tell me quickly what I could buy for 2,000 ringgit, you know? So why all take all the trouble? Well, it's simple. Down-to-earth people work like that. Their mind works around getting all the details, getting all the facts right before they actually arrive at a decision. That's exactly how it works. And imagine if you're a big picture person. You just want an answer. You just want something creative, something, you know, new, something that would question the past. That's how you would actually work. Right? So the way in which you see things will be very, very different. Right? That's how it works around in terms of personality. Now look at your own splash. Well, you've only answered about 15 to 18 questions. The real full Spark questionnaire is 144 questions. Okay? So what you have got is like a little glimpse of what it would be like. So see where you are more towards. Are you more towards extroversion? Are you more towards introversion? Are you more towards people focus? Are you more towards discipline driven? What are you made up of? Right? Just take a look at your splash and just ask yourself, well, I'm not surprised. That's it. Well, I'm not so sure. Well, probably not so sure simply because you've only answered a few questions. But 144 questions would actually give you a complete picture of your personality. Okay, that's pretty much how it goes. And one important question, to go back to the slide that I earlier said, why do we need to know this? We need to know this because we need to understand what sort of a team do we need in our organization, right? And do I need a creative thinker? Do I need someone who's very disciplined and follow rules, sort of a thing? Take, for example, if it's a position related to health and safety. Can you imagine giving a position to someone who's more inspiration driven, who's very flexible, who says it doesn't matter, you don't have to wear your helmet if you're walking within the factory, it doesn't really matter. But someone who's discipline driven will say, hold on a moment, 10 meters, put it on and walk, right? So they're not going to flex in terms of that. So it's quite important to understand, even in terms of job functionalities, what are the type of people that we really need, right? It's a good mixture. This is exactly what personalities are all driven by. So we're all different. All of us on screen today are very different. We're different in our own ways. But how do we work with each other with all our differences in terms of our personalities? And that's pretty much what this, Luminar Spark actually tells you. And it uses for the very purpose of your own development as an individual, as a manager. You would want to understand how different are your juniors. If you are part of a team lead, you'd want to understand what is your team made up of. Let's say you're moving into a new project, right? And you're trying to understand what sort of aspects of people we need. And if it is about creativity and you don't have a big picture thinking person, you might want to ask yourself, hey, we don't have one. We need to look for someone who's more big picture, right? Somebody who would tell us something new, right? Not always looking onto the down to earth aspects of things. Okay, so that's the way in which we actually should go around looking at this whole aspects of trying to build. So this is, a kind of an idea for you to actually understand that personalities are very important, right? And it's more important even at the present times. People end up saying at this moment in time, well, we are all into cost cutting and we're not going to get involved in training and development and so on and so forth. Well, look at it this way. Well, you might have a lot of staff reductions. You might have a lot of things which may be cutting down. But the fact of the matter is, you cannot run away from developing the people that you are left with. It's extremely very important that you actually look at the people that you have and what you really need to do with them in terms of the development of the organization, right? It's extremely very important that we try and understand this very well. Okay, now, pretty much in terms of the way in which that I would see this is in 20 to 30 minutes is very, very hard to give a full picture. I am indeed offering all the people who are present here to come on in a taster session. We'll have a 2-hour a session on the 18th of June. And if you're interested, quite happy for you to come on and just put an email and put subject taster. You don't need to put anything else. And we will have a lovely discussion for perhaps 2 hours, wherein which we will discover more in depth in terms of who you are and what the kind of people that you need to be working with in your own organization, whether you need to incorporate Luminar Spark into your own team. How exactly do we need to go about doing it? So I think a lovely 2-hour discussion would be great, right? And it will go very much in depth for our own understanding and to even question ourselves by saying, well, do I need it? I don't need it. So let's get into that particular questioning aspects of it on the 18th of June. Feel free enough to just send an email, do nothing except put on a subject as taster and push an email. And we'll make sure that you're actually enrolled on it and we come on board. It doesn't matter how many people we have. Let's have a lovely discussion around at that point in time. How am I doing in terms of time, Sheikh? Am I all right?
Yeah, you're doing fine. Everything seems to be so good. I'm actually quite eager to know more about what you have done. But based on what your discussion was, I think I'm more an extrovert and outcome focused. Kind of interesting, isn't it?
Indeed, indeed. Well, it's
Yeah.
quite nice to see that sometimes you see what happens is when people think that they are extroverts and they actually do a questionnaire, the full questionnaire, and then they discover they have a large part of introversion as well. Because you see what happens in a known group, somebody could be an extrovert. In an unknown group, they immediately can become an introvert.
Yeah, might be. I might need to go for your course further for another 2 hours.
So, it's an interesting dialogue about personalities.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the
it
reason
is.
why, well, it's a whole lot of a discovery. Many people have discovered, oh, I never thought that I'm also that. I
Yeah.
thought it kind of happens very well.
All right. Okay. All right. So
Good.
far, I think, is there anything else you want to add in just in case?
Well, I think that's it for the moment. I wanted to restrict my time, and being an
Okay.
extrovert and big mouth, I was afraid that I would overshoot time.
All
So I'm
right. You're
pleased
on
to have
track,
done it.
actually.
Lovely. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
All right. In that case, I'll take out from you then.
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
Do I need to stop?
Yeah, please.
All right, brilliant. Lovely. Thank you so
Okay.
much. And all the best to everyone.